Hello, Shorians! Welcome back to the 2018-19 school year. I want to do a quick review with you of some of the changes that have been made for the evaluation or staff performance for this year. Mostly things that have been legislated and things left to local control. So the first thing is I want you to notice I am at the Lakeshore Public Schools homepage, and this is where you can find the new evaluation forms. If you go under staff, let's close this here so you can see it better. If you go under staff, you will see that there is a performance review link. And under the performance review link, there are two items linked for you. The first is the Danielson framework, the 2013 framework, which is what our evaluation process is based on. So you can get a lot of details by going and looking at that particular document. But I wanted to review with you the performance review process for the 18-19 school year. And there are just a few things that I want to highlight that are new this year. So beginning on page 1, this is the Public Act 173 of 2015 that stipulated in the 18-19 school year that the evaluation process would have the following changes. So the biggest change is that teachers are now 40% of their annual year-end evaluations must be based upon student growth and assessment data, and then 20% of that 40%, or 20% of overall, 50% of the 40% must be based on standardized state testing data. Student growth and assessment has to be from 3 consecutive school years if available. It's important to note that this evaluation data is not based on you teaching the same grade level or teaching the same content. As long as assessment data and performance data is available for you, you do calculate the 3 years out. It's only if a teacher was not in the district or not teaching for the 3 years, and in that case, the number of years will just be, the percentage will be higher than 30%. The second page is the domains again for Danielson, and there's a supplemental document that I showed you for that. So we're going to move on to the next changes, and that is under the evaluation process. And one of the things that you are going to see is that in the plan, that 20% or half of the 40% of evaluation data, which is local assessments, is going to be a student learning objective. And we're going to talk about that more further down in the document. But it's important to note that unlike previous years, K-8 grade levels and content that have NWEA data will not be the required local assessment data. It's a choice that you can make, but we're really working on the PLC process and identifying standards and working on building the assessments and individualizing for students both who are below grade level and above grade level. And we felt it was really important to have that process part of your evaluation data rather than another standardized test that you had less control over the content in the document. On the next page, one of the main changes is that there is an option for you to have video observations. This is a choice. This is not a requirement. So if you are interested in doing that, you should read through video observations and have that conversation with your principal who does your evaluations. The next part is where we see the biggest changes that are happening in the student growth and assessment data. This is the 20% of the data that is required to be from a state standardized assessment. At Lakeshore Public Schools, we will be using the Student Index Growth, which is a growth overview of all students combined for ELA and math proficiency. Each individual school is given a score, and what you see in the document is an example from the 16-17 data. We will actually be using the 17-18 data, which should be released within the next couple weeks, and will mean you will have 20% or 50% of your 40% data requirement. You will already know what that data is by October when you are setting your goals and working for on your evaluation with your administrator. Underneath that, you will see the performance In the district growth scores that we have determined, that an ineffective is between 0 and 50% growth, minimally effective is between 51 and 69, effective is between 70 and 89, and highly effective is between 90 and 100. And this is reflective of the index scores and how they're evaluated according to MDE. So we are just using their standardized evaluation. You could see if we were using the 16-17 data, then everyone for their 20% state assessment data would fall into the effective range. And just a note that that does include everyone in the entire district, from Dr. DePonio on down to any interventionist. So we take the calculation of all 5 buildings, summarize those, divide it by 5, and that's how we get the district growth score, and that is the district growth score for everyone in the entire district. As I mentioned just a moment ago, 20% of the student growth assessment data is going to be based on a SLO, which is a student learning objective that is developed by a teacher in collaboration with their PLC and/or department teams. One of the following must support the outcomes and proficiency. It has to have multiple research-based growth measures or alternative assessments that are rigorous and comparable across grade level, subject area, and/or departments within Lakeshore. Nationally normed or locally adopted assessments that are aligned to state standards. And this is the really important part of what we're asking you to develop for your new growth projection for that 20% of your local data, is that it must be aligned to state standards. And again, there are several different standards that can apply, and that's a great conversation to have with your evaluator. It also can apply to the achievement of individualized or IEP goals. Educators will submit their SLOs in Frontline, so this similarly was your SMART goals that through K-8 was usually based on NWEA scores. And again, we want to go through the effectiveness rating, which is following the model that NDE has established, so that all of our effectiveness ranges are the same across all of our data sets. So if you have 0 to 50 of your percent of students meeting your growth targets, you're ineffective. If you have 51 to 69, you are minimally effective. If you have 70 to 89 of your students meeting growth targets, you are effective. And 90 to 100, you are highly effective. The weighting of the student growth and assessment is also something that's new this year. It is required, as we said earlier, to be across 3 years of data, and we will be making that equal across the 3 years, so 33% of each year. It's important to note again that similar to knowing our state standardized test data, you will already know your growth data from last year because it's what you already used, your growth data from 2 years ago. So the only thing we're really working on and waiting for in this school year is 33% or 1/3 of your 20% of the evaluation. So most of your data score you already know, and the goal is for the focus to return to your instructional practices and those areas of the Danielson rubric so that we are supported in innovative practices and really focusing in on individualized students and how we're assessing them towards standards. The only change in how this is calculated now goes down to the student growth. Domains 1 through 4 of Danielson rubric remain the same. So for the 5th, which is based on the data, you can see that there is a slight change on that as required by legislation and as detailed previously. So your final effectiveness ratings, an ineffective is a 0 to 2, a minimally effective is a 2.01 to 2.59, effective rating is 2.6 to 3.5, and highly effective is a 3.51 and 4. It would serve you well to look at the if then or and or statements because there are some things that apply that regardless of the overall score would be important for you to see. In conclusion, we just want to make sure you know that the legislature is likely to take this up in the session early on this year. And if they do, we will keep you notified of any changes we're required to make based on changes they make. And a special thank you to the LSF team members, principals, and administrators who offered their input in the development of this process.